Here we are again, everybody. Hello, hello. It's really good to see you all. Want to encourage everybody, just jump over to your gallery view and see some of the faces popping in from all around the world. Welcome to International Nature Journaling Week. Ray Bonto's in the house. Margaret's here. Oh, all my friends are here. This is exciting to see. Oh, this is really fun. So yeah, but just dive into your little gallery view and just sort of see who's here. And this is your community, and it's an intentional community that has been building through the work of Beth Ann and others who have just sort of given us a platform to play together. And I'm really, really glad you're here. So just before you all came on, in the green room, yeah, we've got a green room. See? This room is green. So we were in the green room, and we're chatting, and Beth Ann said something that I thought was kind of fun and relevant that kind of could get us started. So Beth Ann, is it okay if I bring you on with me here? Bing! It's Beth Ann. Now, everybody should know that Beth Ann is really kind of shy, and so she doesn't. So this is the inspiration behind this entire International Nature Journaling Week right there, and but she never sort of spotlights herself. So I just wanted to kind of bring her on and say, Beth Ann, we love you and you rock. You absolutely rock. And we want to make your cheeks hurt from smiling so much, because we just want to let you know that we see you, we love you, we really, really appreciate what you are doing. And your way of rolling in this world is shining a spotlight on others and helping them. And it is just such an inclusive and beautiful way to interact with this world. So everybody, I'm gonna encourage you in your chat to send some love to Beth Ann. And
you make me cry.
And let's see if we can make Beth Ann cry. It is, because you know what, that's the good kind of crying, because it's authentic. You have done something absolutely beautiful this week, and you should cry about it, because it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Oh, guys, thank you. Okay, let's wipe these tears away. I want to tell you a secret that I just told Jack, and it's a silly secret, and it's, oh goodness me, thank you. So the secret is this: when we were organizing the themes for this week, I had this idea to arrange it around Jack's two triads. So I noticed, words, pictures, numbers. I wonder, it reminds me of, and then we had one extra day and we thought, what are we going to do? And then we put the mindset thing in there. And Jack said, just throw me in wherever you need someone, organize the speakers and then just throw me in where there's a space. And when I was thinking of speakers for this week, this day, it reminds me of, I was stumped, because so I give nature journaling workshops. It's my job. I teach people of all ages, and I always say these things. I wonder, it reminds me of, and people ask me, what is it reminds me of for? What's the value of that? And I always fudge my way through it. This is the secret. I always say, well, it's useful because, it makes connections, and I'll just make up some stuff, but really I don't know. And so I put Jack in there. I wrote down, yes. And the secret is, I'm going to learn from Jack today so that I can take it to my meetings, because I don't know. I sort of do. I sort of think it's useful because it brings in memory. It helps make connections. I always think of it like, you can, if something reminds you of something else, like say, for example, the other day I was recording a video and it had, I had all these burrs stuck on me, like Velcro things from a plant. And I thought that reminds me of Velcro, you know, and this is what I bring up, because then you have this idea, oh, it reminds me of Velcro, so its function must be to stick. And so those sort of connections are useful. But really, I'm excited to learn more from Jack today. So that's my secret. And I'll hand it back to Jack, but thank you so much for being here. And I'm really looking forward to learning all the good, useful reasons why we should think of it reminds me of. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you. And again, Beth Ann, this community is so grateful to you for this inspiration. And check that out. You just got hugs and kisses from Karen. We really love you. It's beautiful what you've done here. So thank you for what you've done. And also just want to put a bug in the ear of everybody watching this. So this week happened because one person had the audacious idea of, let's just do it. And so it happened. Behind the scenes, there was a whole bunch of sweat and work that went into this. Sort of during in the weeks leading up to International Nature Journaling Week, Beth Ann doesn't sleep. But you hatched this egg, and it's you done good. And we just want to say, I just want to say to everybody that if there's something audacious that you think would make the world better, do it. And
I just want to say that it wasn't my idea, and I did start the ball, but there has been so many people behind this one, so many amazing helpers.
Right. And those people come to a good crystallizing organizer and idea. And so it may have been a hypersaturated solution, but you dropped in that crystal, but then you also you've done so much work to make this happen too. So we really celebrate you in the celebration of this week. Thank you. All right, now, oops.
Oh, we did the same thing. I was unspotlighting, you as well.
There we go. So actually, let's start that way. So I want everybody in the chat, don't hit send yet. But I'd like everybody just to take a moment here. It'll just take a minute, and like everybody to write what is for you significance of it reminds me of. What's up with it reminds me of, and why is it that it is up there with the sort of significance of asking questions and observing, right? So, and that's pretty big billing to be up there with curiosity and observation. That's but it got its name in lights. But what is it to you? And this, everybody, don't hit send yet. And then what we'll do is we will do a big kind of brain dump in 30 seconds. While we're doing that, I want to send a special thank you and shout out to co-hosts Melinda Nakagawa and Ivea Moore today for behind the scenes making us all look good. We really appreciate what you folks are doing to just make this work. You ready, everybody? We are now, everybody, let's hit send, and boink, there it is. Oh, yep, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. Start taking a look through this list and see if there's one that kind of resonates with you. Dickie Christine saying, it reminds me of, opens up memories. Judy is saying it illuminates in a non-brain way, whole mind way, like poetry, like metaphor. See which of these resonates with you. Margaret Hart's talking about how it connects her with her background learning. With her sort of wild world and her background learning sort of are what educators call your prior knowledge. Yeah. This is going to be fun. It's going to be fun. I'm going to save this chat list here because this is why if I'm not reading yours on screen, it doesn't mean that I don't agree with you. It means that I read very, very slowly. But I am, Judy's kind of putting a highlight on the word tethering. Interesting. That's a good word. That's a good word. Right, so I just hit save chat. So I can do that underneath the chat. There's a little ellipsis there, bottom right-hand corner. You click on that and you can save chat. That's kind of a cool thing. Then it puts it on your desktop and you've got this kind of list of cool thoughts about it reminds me of. So I think that it reminds me of all right, this is an important part of this thinking process. And for a while I saw one aspect of this and I was doing it for one reason. And then during a discussion with Art Middlecoff, who's a Charlotte Mason scholar, that another aspect of it reminds me of suddenly from what he was saying, how he used it, it just sort of blew up in my face and I realized like, oh, wow, that's like the deeper reason behind the reason that I was going for. So this is, let's kind of unpack this. I'm going to jump over to my, my share screen here. There we are. It's Jack's messy desktop. Oh, there we go. And I'm going to have some fun. So here's, let's first put this one up on our bulletin board. So it reminds me of is this, it's a very simple prompt. And what you want to do when you're doing it reminds me of is just that, is to start with kind of connecting with what have I experienced before in any way that in one way ties into this. All right, so I want you all to think of what are some sorts of things that can remind you of. You've got some phenomenon happening in front of you and it triggers something in you. So that could be just, you know, direct observations that you're making. It could be something that you once read. It could be something that you saw while surfing the web. All right? I mean, anything is fair game here, right? This, I mean, really rich stuff, and somebody was alluding to this earlier. You know, sometimes you'll see something and that will pull up a childhood memory. And when that happens, oh, that's really, really wonderful and powerful. It's what we call lived experience, your own experiences of kind of going about in this world. You know, could be stuff that you learned in school. I once took this class on botany and I remember Professor Ornduff saying this, you know, whatever it is, stuff that you learned there. It could be something that's from a play. So anything that one way or another is attached to one of your neurons, you want to see if you can re-stimulate those neurons. Because now you have, I'll put a pin in here for whatever kind of new memory you're getting. What you're doing then is you are taking this little memory and you're tying it in with this incredible fabric of other stuff. All the stuff that is one way or another hooked on into your gray matter. And you are networking these things together. The memories that are going to stay the most and be most useful to you in your mind are the ones that have the most links to other things. Those links are relevance. And so the more I can deliberately start to tie things together in my mind, what I'm doing is creating a neural network for holding these experiences, for holding these ideas. And there's two incredible and powerful things that will do. And one of them, I'll start with the one that I was sort of originally kind of on my radar. That this network is what is going to hold your creativity and to build your creativity. So this word has kind of become a buzzword. And, at any time somebody makes a quasi-educational toy, they say that this builds creativity. So play with these blocks, it will build creativity. And it's so overused that I tend to avoid terms like this. But here I'm using this term, and I'm going to be using it in a very specific way. So for my definition of this, I like to try to define things. I try to define love. I try to define creativity. So my working definition for creativity is that creativity is your brain's ability to make useful connections between seemingly unrelated things. So if you can look at something and tie that into this other thing, to tie that into this other thing, and your brain is a networker, that is an incredibly useful skill. And I think it's useful to think of it, independent of, playing with just the way we regularly engage with facts on their own. Your ability to network these things together is its own source of very powerful brain juice. So if you can look at something and you can see the relationship, like Beth Ann, you were mentioning that the Velcro seed, that's a great example of that. And so what you're doing there is you are then sort of tying what you're seeing into perhaps a functional application. And there's a whole area of study called biomimicry, which is the idea of looking at nature for inspiration, for application in our built environment. And so problems to solutions, nature has had a long time to come up with very interesting and novel solutions to all sorts of problems. We've been working at this for billions of years. And so if we are intentional about paying attention, if we pay attention to that, there is wonderful ideas there for solving problems. You don't have to sort of start from ground zero. A lot of these are problems that have already been solved. Similarly, it is, even if we're not just looking, I hope I spelled that right. Did I spell that right? I did. I spelled the word right. I didn't look that one up. The other ones I looked up, but this one I was like right before class. I said, "Oh, I'm going to put metaphor on there too," and so I wrote it down on a piece of paper. But I just realized I didn't spell check it. So, our ways of thinking. A big part of what we do with thinking is thinking by metaphors, and the richer selection I have of things that can be metaphors, that is going to give me a larger toolkit for problem solving. And so creativity, that's one piece of it, and that was what was on my radar before. But just going through this list, who was it who was, somebody else hit on this idea. Oh, but I would have to read more in order to do that. Again, my reading is kind of slow, so I'm not going to find out. But remember, somebody mentioned the idea of relationships and finding relationships. And that is the other big piece of this. And that is that these, it reminds me of, are the connections between things. But, and when I intentionally look for those things, my connection with whatever I'm looking at deepens. So what I'm looking at here, when I'm thinking about, it reminds me of, in terms of connection, is there any part of sort of my relevant history that one way or another connects me into this? In addition to sort of this sort of scientific thinking that the creativity kind of got me exploring, this also invites me to pay attention to the feelings that I have. And so I want to be kind of, I can be analytical with it, but I can also pay attention to, what does that really bring up for me? Where have I felt that before? And what I'm doing here is I'm letting this, it reminds me of process, involve my head and my heart, and at a profoundly different level. It's a way of recognizing those connections, shining the spotlight on them, and it will change the way that I think. Essentially, I am inviting myself to build deeper relationships, or to strengthen relationships that are already there. Let's, as an example of this, take a look at this squash plant from my backyard. Now I'm going to zoom down, and we're a little bit washed out with light, so I'm seeing if I can set up a little shield here, block some of that sunlight. Nope, I want to block it from this side. Hold on. Well, this will have to do. Oh, maybe I used the light. No, that's not work. Okay. So here is this lovely little interesting phenomenon. And this I just picked out of my backyard. And as I start to document this in my nature journal, I will start with, I notice. All right, so I give myself a whole list of things that I notice about it. And my way of doing that is to begin by just sort of saying out loud whatever it is that whatever I see about this thing. I say those things out loud. So with this, I would start my observation. I start my I notice, and I would be saying like, I noticed that there are these big ridges going up these little flukes here, these little things sticking out here. And there's very clear veins, and all the veins are green. And then there's on top of a yellow-orange matrix. And I'm trying to see what I can do with the light levels. I want you to see the color on this thing, and it's not quite coming through. Oh, there's some lovely colors here. So, oh, that's oh no. What if I hold this up? Where do I hold it to block that?
Jack, I think the light coming from your document camera might be too bright. Can you turn that off and see?
Oh, I think I thought I turned that off. Oh,
a little better.
Check you out. See, it takes a village, doesn't it? Yeah, that's better. And actually, I'm going to take one more nature journal. I'm going to make a little fort of nature journals around this thing. Hold on a second. Another use for the nature journal is that you can make a fort. Constantly making forts with my daughters now. We have this better. Yeah, we'll work with this. All right. So here is this little squash thing, and isn't that beautiful? I mean, first of all, just that is really, really interesting. And so we know what to do with the I notices. We first say them out loud, and then we have our words, pictures, and numbers where we start to describe this. Then those questions start to pop up. But what I find is that when I am intentionally doing the it reminds me of, that it takes my brain in a really different direction. It'll bring my brain in a really, really different direction. So let's try that with this. Let's just take a look at this. And I want everybody on your own to start coming up with some it reminds me ofs. While I try to shade this thing. Oh, look, there we got some shade on it. What are some it reminds me ofs? And let's just drop those as they occur to you. Just drop them into the chat. What does this remind you of? And let's just start kind of observationally, scientifically. What does that reminds me of? I'm thinking, you know, on one level, it reminds me of a leaf. It reminds me of a feather. It reminds me of a flame. It reminds me of a crab's claw. It reminds me of these little springy things sticking out here, right? And it reminds me of the hilt of a sword. What does this remind you to? As you come up with an it reminds me of, drop those, just drop those into the chat. A fairy fort. Oh, the Statue of Liberty's flame, an arrow, a citrus juicer. Of course it's a citrus juicer. It's a pine cone, a squid, a mushroom. Do you see how this thing is getting a demigorgon from Stranger Things? Look at this. I mean, isn't that cool? It's a Smurf. Now, can you de-Smurf it? Once you kind of see that? Once you sort of see that it's a torch, wow. And look, so think of of the the troll doll head, right? So now once you kind of got that in your head, you can't unsee this little troll doll head. Look at me, look at the two little eyes there. Ah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, you got me, right? And all of a sudden you've just animated this little thing, and you've got like a new, now it's a toy, right? This thing is literally looking back at me because Rebecca turned it into a troll doll, right? A fiddlehead, a lily, bull kelp, teardrop. Oh yeah, the flame, the gnome hat, the corpse flower. Oh yes, Jack, I absolutely agree. Right? So Jack is sort of seeing a relationship between the corpse flower. So all of these, and you see, you can be as scientific or as playful as you want to be. But what you're doing is you're finding what about this little thing, where is there kind of relevance to you? And when you kind of draw an arrow to that and you highlight it, it hits you at a different level. And then you find yourself sort of feeling back like you did when you were playing with a troll doll. Right? So another thing to do is to sort of think about, is to also kind of let yourself go with some deeper feelings and memories with it. Oh, by the way, for folks who don't know, Ray Bonto right now, I'll bet is sketching this and taking notes of it, right, in his journal. And I want to encourage everybody here just to do the same. So, so never a dull moment. You can make it more exciting to you by using it as an opportunity for sketching. Look at all these bristles down here. Look at those spines. I'm going to zoom on that. I have to break this Ford apart to get to my zoomer. Oh, come on, don't fall apart on me. And we're going to go click. There we are. Look at that. Right? What does that remind you of? Where does that take you? Drop it into the chat. And what you're going to see is that this will open up all sorts of doors. I love the hula dancer too. A garden hose. My hairy legs in winter. It's a porcupine. It's grandpa's whiskers, right? The old man's chin. The caterpillars. The thicket from Sleeping Beauty. Hairy celery, right? Now, by the way, you are now fully armed to create a squash poem. Can you just write, people, they'll say like, oh, write a poem. And people will say like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to write about. But if you start with a little bit of this and you just kind of dig into this, especially this, it reminds me of, your poem is essentially written for you already. Your poem is written for you already. Just start with a couple of observations and throw in a question and it reminds me of, and then that end with that really juicy it reminds me of. Maybe go back to one of the questions and bam, there is a poem right there. More on this if you go back and review Emily Lagren's workshop on poetry, right? This was the technique that she used with us for that first poem. But remember, she talks about how poems are everywhere. And what you have to do is live in a way that allows you to find them. And that's what's going on here. So this kind of metaphorical thinking, you are training your brain to not just think out of the box, but to get out an X-Acto knife and some tape and make the box into something else entirely. That is a visual for anyone who is sketchnoting. Right? So, this is interesting. For me, what just came up. I was just looking at my little squash friend here, the gnome. You can see it now, right? Excuse me, I'm trying to give a lecture here, and what vegetables? What are you going to do, right? So when I was looking at this guy, all of a sudden, sort of seeing this yellow squash, what it brought back to me is sitting at the dinner table with my dad. And I haven't this is a memory that I haven't entertained for a long, long time. So some things they're right at the sort of the tip of the edge of your brain. But just kind of looking at this yellow squash just sort of reminded me that my dad, he hated vegetables. Hated vegetables, did not want to eat his vegetables, but he didn't want his sons to know that he hated vegetables. And so what he would do is he would get, my mom knew this, and he would put on his plate like a smaller pile, and he would strategically move them further apart during the meal, and then sometimes hide them under pieces of other things. And my brother and I never caught on that Dad didn't eat his vegetables. And one day when we were older, when we were eating squash, he outed himself about the vegetables. And that is a memory that is hiding inside of, and it reminds me of my dad eating vegetables. And that's an incredible gift to me. That's an incredible gift to me. I get to remember that interaction with my dad because of this vegetable. Right? So sometimes you're going to find that sometimes, like the same is true with questions. Sometimes a question will just come and beat you over the head and say, like, look, I'm this really rich, juicy question that's right here, and you'll like, oh, you know, that's a great question. The same with it reminds me of. Sometimes you're like, oh, that totally looks like to me. But sometimes you have to kind of sit with it for a while and kind of look at it again and sort of say, like, where do you take me? What do you remind me of? What do you remind me of? How do I feel? And then I'm now sort of thinking about, like, how does remembering that about my dad make me feel? And I feel loved, right? And that was hiding inside a vegetable. So it reminds me of, it's about those building stronger relationships. I cannot look at daisies without thinking of my mom. I can't look at an iris or Mount Whitney without thinking of my wife, Sibel. Places have memories in them. I remember sort of listening to, if anybody has there is a wonderful educator who is going to be helping us out with the, well, I'm going to find the, we're having a nature journaling educators conference. There is an educator named Rob Wade, who is one of our guest speakers in that. And Rob, I was traveling through the Feather River drainage area with him, where he has done this incredible program to connect kids with the landscape around them. And he, through respect and patience and his integrity, has built really strong relationships with Native people in that region. And they have shared with him and the students in the schools where he works some of the stories behind the landscape. You know, that rock up there, right? That is where Coyote did this, and that is this other thing over that you're seeing here on the other side of the river. That big monolith over here, that's where this event happened. So the landscape in that area has resonance and meaning for the students through their own direct experiences, their own lived experiences. And then there's this sort of sacred landscape that is superimposed on top of that from these tales from elders about the history of the canyons and the valleys that they inhabit. And it makes, so as you're going around out there, as you're going around in any place that you know intimately, there's a relationship with the land, and it is strengthened through your observation, but it's also strengthened through your deliberate recollection of those relationships. So every time you're on that land and you remember the story of the elder and you look up at the rock, and you know, it is taking that little piece and it is making that neural connection in your brainweb all the stronger. So you can water the connections and strands between things that you want to resonate for you. And so the landscape that you go around in, as I spent a lot of time in the Point Reyes National Seashore with my parents when I was a kid growing up. And so for me now, when I go there and both of them are gone, there are places where they're still very, very much with me, just by being in that landscape and deliberately recalling those things. You know, if you've been there with someone that you've loved, that your history that's tied to it reminds me of. And so what we do is we intentionally stir all these things up in our minds and in our hearts. And we intentionally remember. And that builds our connection. That builds our relationship. So we've got these two pieces. Again, I've got these two pieces. Wow. There we go. These two pieces, and they are essential parts of thinking and feeling and building a relationship with a place. So my creativity goes up every time I can look at something and think of a novel connection and relationship with it. And that's a skill that I'm going to get better at. And it also makes, so you're changing something in your brain. You're also changing the way that you see objects. And so I now feel this whimsical, because of this chat and conversation here. I was not kind of going there with little troll face when I pulled this out of my garden. I didn't see it. And now I can't unsee it. And I love that. It's just sort of another level of, all of a sudden, here's this little kind of flower fairy, gnome thingy. Yeah, the Beth Ann or Melinda is reminding us that storytelling is a really important part of how human beings have learned to communicate information. So we learn very, very powerfully from anecdote and story. Your ancestors who sat around the fire and listened to the story of the big lion over the hill and didn't heed that, didn't pass their genes along. But the ones who would listen to the story and kind of soak it in and learn from it, they're in the DNA that makes us up. And so if we, are looking for those metaphors and stories around us, the world around us becomes richer. So creativity, you will think better. Right? You're going to train yourself to be a connector. Connection, you're going to establish a deeper relationship and a sense of place with the world around you. Or even this little guy, right? And at the end of the day, the relationships and the network that we have between the world around us, each other, between ourselves and the living and non-living things in the environment, the strengths of those relationships are what gives us meaning. We, when we kind of look at the mental health of people, one of the best indicators that somebody is doing okay is the strength of their relationships. One of the tragedies of how we treat elders, at least in the United States, is that we tend to wall them off and diminish their opportunities for really powerful, engaged relationships with family, with others. Strong relationships mean a healthy mind and heart. And you can be intentional about building those. And while we're thinking about that, let's also be intentional about reaching out again to our elders and see what we can do while they are still here with us, to celebrate them and to have the strongest possible relationships that we can with them. Any relationship that you build and strengthen, your world has just become a better place. So think about that with each other. Think about that with your family. And just to sort of tie that all back in, what is the best way of building a relationship? It's the act of attention. Right? So if you close your laptop and put it away and are willing to, sit down and be with your partner, your daughter, your mother, that time giving deliberate attention, the love that is attention, that is going to build you and your relationships. We can build the same sorts of relationships through the pages of our nature journal with the whole beautiful fabric of the world around us. This piece of it reminds me of is a key reminder of that, and makes doing that sort of part of our everyday practice. And I hope that you will let the beauty of those relationships and those connections flood the pages of your nature journal, and let it move you, let it change you, let it help you dance again with memories and connections that otherwise might have been lost without that little bit of intentionality. And the world just becomes a richer place around us. Somehow we're alive. We are sentient. We're present here on this planet together. And we have the means to have this kind of a conversation. However we got here, we're really, really, really lucky. We're really, really lucky. One last thought is that celebrating those relationships and acknowledging them is also an act of gratitude to the world. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for celebrating International Nature Journaling Week with us. I hope that as we have progressed, you've gotten some inspiration for your words, your pictures, and your numbers. And now your observations, your questions, and the relationships that come from that deep, patient, loving observation. We have one more day of International Nature Journaling Week, where we're going to be taking a look at the kind of mindset that can hold all these pieces and reinforce us in doing it. This is a really powerful way of making your world richer. But the games which we can play in our heads can stop us from really accessing these tools. And so in the final day of International Nature Journaling Week, what we're going to be doing is taking a look at how mindset can allow you to hold these processes and activities and engagement through your nature journal in a way that just makes you want to do it again, and makes it fun, and then you want to do it again, and makes it something that you share, and then makes you want to do it again. And that mindset is, I think, a critical piece. And I hope that you will also join us for the final day of this week. It really is going to help us take all these pieces and put it together. Heather's commenting that this has been an extraordinary week. And I absolutely agree with you. It's also beautiful to come together in a community and celebrate this. And coming out of this week, there's going to be a lot of conversation about what we can do to, continue to be here in a community, to support each other, and to help all of us engage with this going forward. So, final time, I want to express my gratitude to Beth Ann and the posse behind the scenes at International Nature Journaling Week. On this call again, Ivea Moore and Melinda Nakagawa, doing so much to support us here. You've done a really good thing, and thank you. Be well, be at peace, and keep nature journaling. I'm going to go play with squash in my garden, and I invite you to find some little, there we are, some little organism near you and take a closer look and see what then opens for you. And thank you so much for being here.
Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
You all.
You have this ability to take us on this journey, an emotional journey, and you made me cry several times during that presentation, and goosebumps and smiling and laughing and crying again. And it's just this amazing emotional journey with you. Thank you.